This is Ichariba Choodee, an Okinawan Voices and Stories podcast, episode 6 on the Okinawa Memories Initiative. 𝕼𝕚𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐. We've been absolutely overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support from all of you since our launch at the beginning of this year. And thank you to everyone who has donated and supported us on Ko-fi. We truly appreciate it. We want to shout out to our amazing artists and brands. They graciously donated their items for our free Instagram giveaway. Those artists are Lisa Risa, Candice Doodles, Blooming in Asia, Mahelani and Back, Kanasa, Malama Soaps, Nina Zuma Pottery, and our very own Mariko Middleton. We also want to thank everyone who supported us on Kickstarter. We can't wait to talk with some of you. Without further ado, we aim to create an open and safe learning and growing space in this podcast. We will explore, alongside guest speakers, what it means to be Shimanchu. Our intention and prayer for this project is to cultivate our knowledge about our histories, celebrate the amazingly diverse and resilient culture of our people, inspire other Shimanchu of all generations and geographic locations to be curious about their histories, and preserve those precious pieces of our identity for future generations. And of course, to have fun along the way. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll stumble around and be human. We hope you will come to join us for this evolving journey. We're looking forward to it. Thank you everyone for such a successful first year, with only one more episode to go for season 1. 𝕬𝕚𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕬𝕐𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬
podcast. Wanne Erica yaibin. My name is Erica, and today I'll be your co-host alongside Tori.
Hi.
Itashiku nige-sabida. This month's episode, we will be talking about the Okinawa Memories Initiative, or OMI for short. And we have guest speakers, Alexis Lex McClellan-Ufugusuku, goes by she, her pronouns, and Stephen Yogi, who goes by he, him pronouns. We had one more guest, Sean Torralba, who goes by he, him pronouns, but was not able to join us today. But he has provided a blog post for us of going over his experience with OMI that you can find on our website, and link to it will be in our show notes. Lex is a mixed race Shimanchu from South Bay, San Diego. Her Oba-chan was born in Tinian before being repatriated to Uchina after the war. Through her Oba, Lex traces her family and ancestral roots to Tsukazan and Cochinda. Currently, Lex is a PhD student in the Department of History at UC Santa Cruz, coach for USC's women's lacrosse team, and an avid Pokemon fan, though she has yet to catch them all. Stephen is a Japanese Okinawan American from Half Moon Bay, California. With roots in Motobu, Stephen's family came in different ways, both pre- and post-war. Stephen is currently working as an assistant at Skaden Arps and is an avid musician and crack climber, with plans to find new first ascents in Okinawa. Welcome, Lex and Stephen, to the podcast. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I think our first conversation was like 3 months ago to kind of just like initially get this going. And so 3 months has now passed, and I'm really excited to learn more about OMI because I did not know much about it until Tori kind of suggested this topic. And yeah, so welcome aboard.
Yeah, ℍ𝕚𝕤𝕚𝕣 for having us. I just want to clarify, I don't coach for USC. I coach for UCSC.
Sorry, typo, UCSC.
Yeah. Don't go Trojans.
Sorry about that. Thank you for the correction.
No worries. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on the podcast.
Yeah, so like kind of just going straight into it. Could you explain the origins of OMI and like who's involved with this, and how did the two of you get involved in OMI?
Yeah, so I guess I can start with this because the genealogy of OMI is like, I think it's really interesting at least. But so what's now the Okinawa Memories Initiative used to be called the Gale Project. And the name comes from a USCAR photographer who was stationed in Okinawa at Tori Station in 1952 to 1953. His name was Charles Eugene Gale. He was an army dentist, a student of Ansel Adams, and he spent his year in Okinawa going around the island and taking pictures of the people that he met there. So the photos were given to special collections by Gale's daughter. They're given to Shelby Graham at the Cezanne Gallery in Porter College at UCSC, who identified them as having artistic quality, but didn't know the historical background around it. They then made their way over to Dr. Alan Christie in the history department at UCSC, because he was a historian of Japan, but he had also written a pretty important article about Okinawa in the 1990s. And so he determined that they also had historical value because they were taken in a moment that was right before the exponential increase of bases on Okinawa Honto. And so that's how the Gale Project was born. The original idea for the project was that they would try to take a group of undergraduate students back to Okinawa to identify the locations of the photos and then any people who ended up being in the photographs. The Gale Project continued on for quite a few years, and in 2018 made the official shift to being the Okinawa Memories Initiative, because what we were trying to do was no longer just about the photographs. It was about conducting oral histories with people, really teaching undergraduates and having experiential learning opportunities. And so from that, the modern OMI was born.
That's cool. And sorry, so just for my own references, so it first was brought up in 2010, you said, or when?
Yeah, in the beginning of the 2010s, the photos were given by Jerry Gale, his daughter, to the university. Okay,
cool. And so when did you first start becoming part of OMI or the Gale Project?
Yeah, so I guess I think I have a bit of an unconventional story about how I joined the Gale Project, in that my mother made me do it. But yeah, so when I was looking at colleges in 2014, I was visiting a bunch of UCs and a bunch of CSUs, which is the California state schools that we have here. And we were meeting, me and my mom, with Stephanie Sawyer, who is the undergraduate history advisor at UC Santa Cruz. And Stephanie she's so awesome. I think all of us at OMI just have nothing but good things to say about her.
She's an absolute legend. Love her.
Yeah, she's so great. But so we were meeting with Stephanie Sawyer, and she's giving us the pitch why I should come to UCSC and major in history. And she's showing us the history department website and talking a little bit about the professors as one of those moving pictures shuffles by. And she gets to Alan Christie, and she's like, oh, this is Alan Christie. He currently has a research project with undergraduates, and they're looking at photos from Okinawa. And my mom goes, oh, I'm from Okinawa. So then they proceed to have a conversation and leave me out of it. And at the end of that, Stephanie calls Connor Lowe, who was a senior at the time, later became a really good friend of mine, calls him, drags him down to the history department office, and makes him give me and my mom a tour of the campus and pitch the Gale Project.
Wow.
And as we're driving away that day, my mom was like, you're going here. And I was like, okay. And then so I went to UCSC and I joined the project in my first year, and I was terrified of Alan at the time, which is so funny to think back on. But I wanted to be a part of his project so badly, but I didn't know how to start the conversation. So I ding-dong ditched his office hours. And so after doing that once, the next week I came back and was like, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. You're going to talk to him. You're going to casually mention that, I'm Okinawan. And so I have this plan in my head, and I go into his office and I was like, hi, Professor Christie, I'm in your class. I hear you have a project about Okinawa. And before I can even get in another word, he goes, yeah, you want to join? And then I was like, oh yeah, oh, did I mention I'm Okinawan? And like that's the beginning of it all.
The origin story. That's awesome. And what a cool like way to, I feel like in a previous episode, we kind of mentioned like how whenever you say like you're Okinawan or from Okinawa, there's like this immediate connection and it just kind of takes you through these tangents and things. And so that's cool how it worked out for you.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Stephen, what about you? How did you get involved in OMI? What's your origin story?
My origin story is not as interesting as Lex's for sure, but I actually found out about it at my first year at Santa Cruz. I came in as a transfer student and I was taking a general education history class, like an American history class, I think. And one of the TAs that I had for a discussion section was telling a little bit about himself. And he's like, yeah, I study like, religion in this little island in Japan. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Like, what island are you studying? And he's like, I'm looking at Okinawa. I'm part of this group. And I was like, you're lying. Like, no one studies that. And he was like, no, like, I definitely am. We're having a meeting tonight. Like, hop on the bus. Like, I'll take you there. And I was like, wow, like, people are looking at this, like, place where my family's from. Like, this is amazing, because I grew up in like a really small, like kind of semi-rural town, and I didn't know any other Okinawans growing up. And I didn't think that anybody really, talked about it or like knew about it, or there was any like discourse going on. I mean, I came into Santa Cruz as a music student initially, and I came into one of the OMI meetings at our advisor's house, one evening, and it was maybe the first week I had been on the campus, and we're in this beautiful house that overlooks like the Santa Cruz Bay, and all of these people who are like know each other super well, like it's like a big family reunion almost, but like kind of a frattier vibe almost. And I met Alan and Lex, and they're like, oh, we heard that you're Okinawan, like you want to join this project and like look at all these old documents and stuff. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. Like, sign me up. And then it just kind of took off from there, Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, it's kind of similar to Lex, how you kind of mentioned that you're Okinawan and you just get pulled in, and it like took you to this amazing project. I mean, for the both of you. And I think we may have talked about this previously, but how many times have you both been to Okinawa for to visit, to do some, I guess, field work?
I've only been the one trip that I went on with Lex. What was it, 2019, I want to say? Or 2018?
Yeah, 2019.
2019, yeah. So that had been the only time I had ever been. But Lex, you've gone quite a few times, right?
Yeah, I'd say for OMI/Gale Project stuff, I've been 3.5 times. And I say half times because after I got involved in the Gale Project in 2015, me and my grandma, my opa, we took a hard copy of all of Gale's photos and we flew back to Okinawa for a month, and we tried to hunt as many down as we could with my aunties and rent a car, and that was just so much fun.
That sounds fun. It's like a little adventure.
It was. I felt like not Indiana Jones because colonizer-y, but like on a Pokemon quest. Like, go find this thing now and talk to this person, and it was great.
That's cool. Yeah, it's like a little puzzle because you're like solving pieces and like, oh, people might remember this, but how does this relate to that? And
yeah, and I'm such a history nerd. I always have been, but it felt like exactly the history work that I wanted to do. Like, this is what it meant to be a historian.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. But kind of going back a little into like the history part of like the original of like Gale's photos. So like we understand that that Shimanchu weren't able to photograph either during the U.S. military government of the Ryukyu Islands, which was between 1945-ish and 1950, or the civil administration of the Ryukyu Islands from 1950 to 1972. But how does that make you feel, or for either Lex or Stephen, like Shimanchu not being able to photograph like themselves and stuff? And do you think they would interact differently with the photos if the Shimanchu had agency over their own like photographic representation during this time?
Oh man, see, this is tough because I came into Omi at the tail end of when I feel like we were moving away from using the photos a lot. I mean, we definitely used them a lot while I was there, but I know that's a really interesting thing. Like, I think that like photography and the act of photographing yourself and your kind of capturing that own essence of being is like really important. And the examples of photography that we do have from those time periods are, I mean, for the most part, like through a lens of like the United States or through some sort of like governmental thing, aside from, I guess, the artistic integrity of Gale's photos. But that's really tough. I feel like I can only imagine what like people would have been photographing, because I feel like that it would have captured a completely different essence of what life was like there. I mean, I think we get a sense of it through some of Gale's photos of like day-to-day life. Like, I would really have loved to see more of like just mundane things, like very day-to-day activities. I think there's a lot of like value in that.
Yeah, I think because it's like I could have the very simplified answer, like, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel bad, Shimanchu, have any agency over what they photographed. But I think like my more nuanced answer on that. So the photo ban that you're talking about, we have a document that we found in the National Archives, and it's titled "By Command of General Eagles," and it's dated to, or by command of Major General Eagles, and it's dated to 1949, and it rescinds access to cameras island-wide, except if they're for being used by military personnel. And so the result is that the majority of photographs we have from this time period are military grade. Gale is one of the few exemptions that we know of. So on the one hand, I'm glad that photos exist that aren't just these military quali photos. But on the other hand, like, I think this question is sort of intimating, I think beyond the agency and the ability for Shimanchu to photograph or choose to be photographed is the question that, or a point that is brought up to us many times in Okinawa, is that they wouldn't even have known in a lot of cases that they were being photographed because many had never seen a camera before. And I think that there's so many layers to this. So like, do I think if Shimanchu had not only the legal ability to take photographs, but also the access to camera, the access to film, the access to dark rooms, if I think those barriers were all brought down at the time, would the photographs we have be extremely different? Yes. Am I glad that photos like Gale's exist? Also, yes. But with a number of caveats about the constraints on agency at the time.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I did not think about this super detailed, but just the idea of like the time period is almost 22 years, and that's a significant amount of time for a camera ban, although I think Tori may have done some research, a little more research about this. I'm not too sure, but it sounded like towards the tail end, there's more access to cameras in the Shimanchu community. In what ways, I'm not sure, but at least towards that timing ending of it. Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, so I was going to say the camera ban definitely wasn't the full 22 years.
Oh, okay.
One of the document that we do have, you can actually see it on the old Gale Project website, has a big red pencil mark X over it. And then it's a typewriter order. And so the date where it's issued is February 14th, 1949. And then in red under it says rescinded, and it looks like 1953.
Oh, okay.
So it was a fairly short amount of time. But yeah, we don't really have a definitive date. 1953 might be the date. It's likely that it's the date, but it could also be a order number. So these are some of the things that we don't know, but it definitely didn't extend for the entire occupation.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say that's like a very long time for camera ban to be, and there's like a lot of things that can be lost during that time. But that's still very interesting that even during that short amount of time that things could have been different or like shown in a different light. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm learning so much about like the history of it and stuff like that. But kind of switching gears again, and kind of going back into the 𝔼𝕤 and your experience. Can you guys talk about like any favorite experiences or memories in relation to the project?
Oh, it's so hard to pinpoint just one, because I think like we can talk about 𝔼𝕤 in all these academic ways and the things that it's done for my career professionally, my emotional well-being and journey as a 𝔼₡₀ personally.
Mm-hmm.
But then the thing that doesn't get talked about with 𝔼𝕤 a lot is like, I met my best friends through this project. Like, and I've had these friends for many, many years now. And even the ones who I only overlapped with for a few years now, or for a few years at the beginning, or people who are coming in now, there's these connections that we gain through this project. What we do as undergrads is so different than what other undergrads get to do. There's like a bond that's really hard to sort of explain in an uncringy way. I have a very specific memory I'm thinking of, and it's not my favorite by any means, but for me, it was a really elucidating memory when I think back about like my evolution of like political consciousness as a 𝔼₡₀, and where I fall on the spectrum now is definitely more on the anti-base decolonization end of things. And I really think that I can pinpoint that evolution back to one moment. And that was on the 2018 trip, right after Governor 𝔼𝕤𝕟𝕟 had died. We were up at the ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕠 protest site. And because the governor had just died, there was a lot of news outlets that were covering ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕠 and also the protest in memory of him. And a reporter came up to me, and because someone had pointed out that I had Okinawan roots. So they came up to ask me something, and he goes, what do you think about this base? And like, I should have probably thought about it more at the time. I didn't really give a very nuanced answer, but the answer that I gave, which was, I think if Japan treated Okinawa as equal, there wouldn't be so many bases on Okinawa. When I think back about the evolution that I've had since then and leading up to that point, they both converged then. And I think like through the study of history, through the study of not just the battle, but the kingdom period history, the assimilation period history, even the dual colonial period, which you can argue that Okinawa is in now, all of those things sort of like came out of my mouth in that one statement. And so I think it might not be a favorite memory of mine, but it's definitely like a highlight of an 𝔼𝕤 trip that I can't get anything else to come up that seems more prescient than that.
Yeah, wow, that's a big like realization moment though, to have like everything just come up in that one moment and just in that one impactful statement. That's, I mean, yeah, that would stay with you.
I think the bigger point though is like, at that point, that was my second time going to the ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕠 protest site. The first time in 2017, we went out on boats into Outer Bay. And since then, I had taken an Okinawan history class. I'd written a senior thesis paper on Okinawan history and the history of military bases, relationships to local women, because that's how people like me exist. But so I think at that point, had it not been from the opportunities that I had to study Okinawan history, I definitely wouldn't have reached that conclusion when I did.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What about you, Stephen? Do you have any moments or favorite experiences in relation to the project?
I think Lex covered a really good point. Yeah, I did a lot of the like value that I think I can reflect on in my time with 𝔼𝕤 is a lot of the interpersonal relationships that I've made with people. Yeah, and the nature of the work is just like completely different than I feel like any of the other experiences I've gotten at the collegiate level. I guess going back to kind of like Lex's statement about like, man, this is what history should be, like doing the photo thing. I guess the time that I went to Okinawa, I kind of came with like a sub mission, I guess, of like what I wanted to do there. There was a local teacher at the Santa Cruz area who was like a friend of one of our advisors from the local community college, who was like a older American Indian teacher who taught a lot of like indigenous studies classes, indigenous like literature classes. And just by kind of like connection, I ended up doing an oral history interview with him. And I guess part of like the research was like showing up to the classes that he taught and like hanging out with him. And we like developed a really good friendship. And I did my interview with him, and he gave this amazing story about the time where he was serving in Okinawa, like prior to the Vietnam War. So he was there for like the build up, like the big troop surge, like early 70s. And he, as like an American Indian, was trying to like convey how many similarities there were between what he experienced, like interacting with Okinawan people, and what it was like with his family, with his tribe, like on the reservations. And due to his exposure to Agent Orange in Okinawa, where they stored a lot of Agent Orange, like on the way, shipping it to Vietnam, he was telling me that like he developed this like very like severe like nervous injury, like he has a lot of shakes and stuff, and he wasn't able to go back to Okinawa ever. And he told me this amazing story about kind of almost going AWOL and like traveling around the island. And he stayed up in the north, like up like 𝕍𝕚𝕐𝕐𝕬𝕝 area, or no, it was like more north than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lex and I had lunch with him before we left on the 2019 trip. And he was like, hey, like I would love it if you could like find these photos like of where I like stayed, like the families that I knew, the village that I lived in. And if you could do like a prayer like ceremony for me. And I was like, oh man, like that's kind of a lot. Like, I don't know anything. I haven't even graduated yet. And Lex and one of our other advisors, Cameron Vanderskoff, took a day-long trip, and we marched around the hills, like way up north, like Kunigami area. And we were walking through this 𝔼₄ orchard. And I'm like looking at my phone of these pictures, these black and white photos that he had taken in the early 70s. And it was like this aha moment when we finally found like the same view that he had seen like 40 years ago.
Wow.
And that was one of those things that was like, man, like this is history, like making a difference right here. Like seems, something that I don't think I could have gotten anywhere else other than this particular project. So that's one of the like amazing memories that I really value from our time with Omi.
Wow, that's really special. I mean,
that was such a day.
That was a big day.
We drove all the way up over ℍ𝕚𝕚𝕣𝕬𝕝 and back down the other side of the island. And we were staying in Naha.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that was
a really great day.
You said that was back in 2019? Oh, wow. So I think you guys kind of mentioned this like a little briefly when you're explaining this, but is that what makes Omi unique? Is that like you actually get to experience going to location, in this case Okinawa? So I guess like experiential learning versus just being in the classroom learning. Was that like something that was established like before, like that was like put into the curriculum intentionally during when you guys were starting Gale Project and then into the Okinawan Memories Initiative?
So I think it's from its inception, the undergraduate hands-on research component has always been there. The original Gale photos were used originally in a senior seminar that was taught by Alan Christie. I think it was in 2013 or 2014. And from there, they were able to raise money and take the first Gale Project trip back to Okinawa with a smaller group of students. And so since the beginning, it's it's always run on undergraduate research and dedication. I think it is one of the things that makes it unique. From an educator's standpoint, I think the experiential learning is absolutely one of the things that makes 𝔼𝕤𝕣𝕬 unique. How do you teach what coral and limestone bricks actually look or feel like without going and seeing 𝕼𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬 Castle? Like, the two are just so incomparable. As a Shimanchu and like someone who grew up very like aware, I was Okinawan American, and I had Okinawan American friends, and that history never was found outside of the Battle of Okinawa sentence in a textbook. Again, it's like hard to not sound really like cringy and like kind of like sappy about it. But I think like 𝔼𝕤𝕬𝕬 is unique as someone who identifies as Shimanchu, as Okinawan, as Ryukyuan, to be able to actually have a concerted space, resources, and support network to actually focus my attention on this place that I'm connected to is extremely unique, because you just don't find Okinawa-based projects other places, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's really unique too, because I feel like, or at least from my experience, outside of Hawaii, I don't think I've ever seen like a program focusing specifically on Okinawa. So that's really cool that there's somewhere outside of on the mainland focusing on Okinawa studies and like preservation and stuff like that, and just being out in the field, because I feel like a lot of people don't like history because it's just textbook driven. And so I think that's also really cool that to experience history, you're talking to people who actually lived it, and then forming that relationship and what it means in context to everything. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the number of 𝕼𝕤𝕬𝕬𝕬𝕬 who we've shown the photos to at this point, in 2018 and in 2019, we really wanted to make a concerted effort to be volunteering at Kominkan. And one of the things that we could do was show these 𝕼𝕤 and these 𝕼𝕬 photos that they might remember that time period of. And like the things that they have to say are so much more than you could ever get in a textbook. I think like it's really hard to explain it, but how do you teach students only through words and text that there's the possibility for multiple truths? It's harder. Whereas like with the photos, we're in the same Kominkan, the Shioya Kominkan up in Old Gimi village. And we showed this one photo, and the woman looks like she's wearing shoes, kind of like flip-flops, but you can't really tell what they're made of. They might be made of banana leaves, says this one woman. And she goes, those are definitely made of banana leaves. I know because I made shoes that were made of banana leaves. That's them. And then we were just shifting the photos around the room. And this other woman goes, those shoes are made of truck tires. And to both those women, their memories are true. They're absolutely both the truth. And I think like that's just one example of what you can get with experiential learning and learning from people who actually like remember the time period, experience the time period.
Yeah. So I know because of COVID, you guys haven't been able to go back, but I know your hopes is to go back next year. Is that correct?
Yes, tentatively, but we will not go until it's safe.
I see.
And then, not safe for us because we're vaccinated, but
no, yeah.
When the COVID situation in Okinawa is okay for us to go back.
For the community. So for continuing on for like into the future, this is, sorry, kind of going off tangent, but
no worries.
So is like the next, do you guys have like different phases in terms of like, as you're continuing like the 𝔼𝕤𝕬𝕬 like thing, do you guys have like specific stories that you're collecting, or is it just you're just talking to the 𝕼𝕤 and 𝕼𝕬s and stuff, or just the community there?
There's a number of things we want to accomplish with 𝔼𝕤𝕬. One of them is increasing local partnerships, both in Okinawa, but also with Kenjinkai in the US. These are things we want to do. We have grand ambitions of going to Bolivia and to Brazil.
Awesome.
But I think the project has already evolved so far beyond what it was ever imagined to be that it's hard to say that whether or not we have distinct phases, because a lot of what we're doing is based on what the community has expressed interest in. A collection of oral histories is one of them. Originally, our plan for the Gale photos was to have a big one-time only exhibit. And it turned out that 𝕼𝕤𝕚𝕼𝕬𝕐 couldn't drive to Naha. So we took the photos to them. And so I think the evolution is sort of like an implicit aspect of Omi. It's not to say we don't plan things out. We make plans. And currently we're in the works for a year-long event series about the year of reversion. So we'll start those at the end of 2021. We're going to have a lecture about the global politics of the time leading up to the decision to revert the DQs back to Okinawa Prefecture. And then next year, we're going to have a year-long series of reversion events. So we do plan that.
I'm looking forward to those lectures. Are they going to be online by any chance?
We think so. I think there's so few Shimanchu in the Bay Area that the way that we're most useful is by Zoom at this point. And it allows us to talk to more people that we can't afford to fly out here, or they can't afford to come out here, leave kids' work, whatever it may be. Yeah. It's more accessible.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it because I've been checking out those events online. I'm just like, I love all this. But kind of continue on with like the connection and stuff. But what does it mean for you to be able to go to Okinawa or talk with Shimanchu in the diaspora and connect to the communities to the project? And like, just how does that make you feel, whether from like a historian perspective or like as a Shimanchu? But maybe Stephen, you can like talk, start on this one.
I guess I got to start off with like thanking Lex, I guess, because I think that joining Omi was this like big cultural upheaval for me. Like Lex really instilled this like sense of like identity and this sense of like pride in being like a Chinanchu that I really didn't have like prior to joining Omi. Like I knew I was like very different. Like the other Japanese American kids I like sort of grew up with like didn't look like me. I'm very like tan and short and kind of fuzzy. And I was like, okay, like definitely not Japanese, but it's been amazing. Like I think that Omi has really been like such an amazing gateway to connecting with like Shimanchu from all around the world. Like here in like the Kenjinkai, going to all the different kominkan, like it's just like truly amazing to be able to connect with so many people. Like just the fact that we're sitting here and like having like a discussion about this is just like mind boggling to me. Like I never
seriously.
Like 3 years ago, I would have never thought that there would have been like a podcast specifically dedicated to like talking about like, you know, Shimanchu related topics. But yeah, it was, I just think it's like such a crazy thing now that like, I don't know, I can like really like proudly identify as like this aspect of my like heritage, and like definitely Omi was like the gateway drug to that.
The gateway drug.
Yes,
it is. I think that Omi is the gateway drug to like Okinawan related political activism. Hot take. Or maybe it's just you converting all the youth to political wokeness.
We love to see it.
Yeah, I think one note that I'm realizing I want to talk about quickly that I should have mentioned a lot earlier is like, even in the way that we're talking now, like using Okinawa, the project has yet to go to the islands that are not Okinawa Honto. Like it's a very Uchina-centric project. And our use of Okinawa reflects the current political situation of being a prefecture. And so I think like if we were having this conversation maybe about my own personal work, the terminology that I personally would use would be different. But I just want to put that in there because I know Tori, on the Discord, you were having this like, prompting this conversation about terminology. And I think like, that's a conversation like as 𝔼ℎ𝕬𝕬𝕬 we definitely like should be having, because I think like language evolves, and we can talk about that as well. What does it mean for me to be able to go back to Okinawa and talk with people still living there? I'll disaggregate the two for a moment, because I think in the last, well, really since COVID, my exposure to like shikenu shimanchu, like diasporic shimanchu, has exponentially increased because of social media. And so I think that's its own separate camp, at least in the way that I experience it. What it means going back to Okinawa, I was lucky enough that my mom and my oba were really committed to making sure me and my sister would go back, that we knew where we were from, we knew our family. And so up until I was 19, I had never really had a conversation with Uchinanchu who were not in my family. So I think like through Omi being exposed to a wide variety of life experiences, people who worked on base, people who didn't live anywhere near a base, has just grown exponentially. I think like I was extremely lucky. I grew up around a lot of other Okinawan Americans, and because of the nature of the military and who cycles in and out of Okinawa and San Diego, I grew up with a lot of mixed race Okinawans. And so that part of my identity was always quite secure until I started going back professionally with Omi. And the assumption when I was with my family was like, oh, like Mago, like she must be mixed. And like, why would a random white girl be with all these Uchinanchu people? And so like when I went back with Omi, and I'm surrounded by people of all different backgrounds, the assumption people jumped to was never that I was Uchinanchu. It was never that I was Okinawan. It was always that I was white. And then I was on this research project. And so it really made me shift how I recognize that I present to people. Like I'm a very white passing person, and I recognize that. And intellectually, I recognized that at the time. But it wasn't until going back and being confronted with it with a group that I identify as, that was a big moving experience for me. It changed how I held myself around people, recognizing that the little intangibles, like my height, the way that I present as a Caucasian person, like might be jarring to folks. Like, and so that made me very, very conscious on those trips. Yeah. Like when we do interviews, like Stephen can attest, like I never stand fully up. I either hunch over or I'm sitting on the ground, because I'm not terribly tall, but 5'8" is taller than most of the OG would be interviewing.
Yeah.
Damn near a foot taller than I am.
So do they react differently? I guess when you're interacting with locals, as like, I think you kind of already talked about this, Lex, but I guess for Stephen, when you're interacting with the locals there, is it different from when other people also or non-Shimanchu are reacting or talking with them, with the locals? Sorry.
I have some thoughts. So I think like in group settings, what I was just talking about was definitely the case. When I was out by myself, either at the Sanye in Tsukazan village, because I was visiting my family for the day, or no matter where it would be, I realized that the bar for being mixed and not looking Shimanchu was so low. Like the fact that I could speak to people in Japanese, and I was at the Sanye in Tsukazan once, and I said ℍ𝕚𝕚𝕬𝕚 to the cashier, and she gave me like 6 manju just for using Uchinaguchi. And like when Stephen, you can speak more to this. Like I think because I don't look like I should speak Japanese, or I don't look like I should identify as Okinawan, people didn't expect it. And so they treated me like I had it a lot easier in that sense. I don't want to speak for our students because none of them are here that don't identify as 𝔼𝕉𝕉. But one of the comments we would get a lot from people was, one, why do you even care about Okinawa? And the second was, we're so excited that you care. You don't have to care. We're so excited that you care. And so that was something we got a lot.
Interesting.
That's so funny you had that experience. I had a very similar experience in Skazan as well with Sean, actually. It was like Sean and Tosh and I, and we were at a bar somewhere just eating dinner after, it was like the day after Irenuki. And we were coming back from like the Peace Park. We were having dinner, and the lady was like, I think we were like closing the tab or something. And I said something to her in like Uchinaguchi, and she came back like with this big plate of yagisashi, like the goch sashimi. And Sean and I were just sitting there like, what's happening? So I think it's, like speaking like in the different like, like local languages, I feel like definitely elicits like a very interesting reaction, because I think that we have kind of driven that into a lot of the 𝔼𝕤𝕗 students' head to use like the vernacular. But yeah, I guess on the flip side of Lex's situation, like I feel like I look very stereotypically like Okinawan, like short and dark. But my language skill is terrible. Like it's gotten better since the last time I went to Japan, but I really didn't speak very good Japanese when we went over there. And like doing my field research, I would go off like by myself a lot. People definitely expected me to have like a better language skill than I did. So it was kind of an interesting thing, but I don't know. I think that because we were in such different situations, like I also had like a pass from being like, oh, it's this like, Okinawan American kid coming over. And, it was like a very interesting thing to see how like Lex was treated by a lot of locals versus how I was treated. Like I remember there was a woman in Koza. I was visiting one of the people who, I don't know if she's still running it, but the Koza Mixtopia, I guess it's a museum, Erica, was running that. And it's this little like tiny pop-up sort of public history project in like the back alleys of Koza. And she is trying to like engage the community with a lot of her work, like trying to recreate what it was like in like the Black district of like Okinawa City during the occupation years. And she was telling me about one of her neighbors in this little like back alley who runs like a little tempura shop. She's like, oh, you have to meet this woman. Like her family's from Motobu as well. Like I'll introduce you. Maybe you could like cook with her or something. And I was like, oh no, like this is not going to end well. And so she's like just busting off this like flurry of stuff like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like this is too much. And it was just an interesting expectation that like people immediately assumed that I was like either from there, I felt like, or, had like a better understanding of things than I actually did, which was kind of funny because I felt so woefully unprepared, like going to Okinawa for the first time with 𝔼𝕗.
Oh, that's kind of entertaining, though. I mean, it was some experience, like things you probably weren't expecting to, and have some stories to tell about that, I'm sure.
It's definitely even happened stateside, like doing work at different Kenshinkai. Like when Lex and I visited the OAA in Los Angeles, we'll like talk to all the like Oba and Oji-chan, and they'll expect me to like, talk with them, and Lex is the one answering, and I'm just like, hello, I'm here. Nice to meet you.
I think sort of on the flip side, I don't even know which way we're flipping at this point. A flip side is it's not our express intent to really study, like, it's hard to avoid the bases in Okinawa, as we all know. And so one of the things that our students do on some days is they go to American Village because it's just such like a sight to behold. Like if you've never been there, it's just really kind of wild, to be honest.
It's definitely like a very visceral acid trip kind of feel.
Yeah. But so when we walk around where there's a lot of Americans, it's like being home. It's like really crazy, actually. Like people just like shout cat calls and like they'll just speak just in English, even if it's like Okinawan shopkeepers. And I think we don't have time to really dive into the intricacies of the US military base apparatus and Pacific imperialism, but that's also like, it's weird how you can sort of like, by traveling a few miles, really travel in and out of these worlds of acceptance.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I know we don't have time to dive into that, but I'm really curious because, yeah, I've never been, so I only know hearsays of like the bases, or like in terms of experiencing being in Okinawa, but then like on the base, and then just that dual kind of like weird in and out experience of where am I, and also the politics of bases and stuff. That's another big topic. But
yes, it certainly is.
Yeah. We will get to that on a different episode. But what are your hopes and dreams for the project looking forward, or for like OMI, and what does success look like for you, Lex and Stephen?
I think we've already succeeded. I think the odds were against a scrappy little undergraduate research project, to be honest.
Scrappy is a great word to describe the team.
But no, I think one of the things I'm most proud of was myself, Drew Richardson, and Malaya Simon Reynolds in 2019. Yes, 2019. Under the supervision of Dr. Alan Christie, we applied to a University of California Office of the President grant to create an online class expressly about Okinawan history.
Oh, wow.
And for me, that was one of the big successes. We got the grant. We made this beautiful class. It might be too ambitious. Our reviews are pretty good, but it's been offered twice. We've had over 135 students take it so far. And so I think like one of the things I've really realized through working through OMI was that I really actually enjoy teaching. And more so than anything, I want to teach people a history of Okinawa from a perspective that A, doesn't get taught in the US very often, B, doesn't get taught anywhere very often. Mm-hmm. And so I think like, for me, we've already reached that success, and the class will run for at least 5 years. It's contractually obligated for the department to run it. And so I guess the next step would be the university increasing enrollment. Instead of it being 60 people per term, maybe 120 people, and you can hire 2 TAs to teach it. I think that the education aspect is just so central to so many of the other goals I want to achieve personally and professionally in my development. So I think we've already succeeded, but we can succeed more.
Yes. And if I were still a student, I would totally take that class. Like I would sign up for it in a heartbeat.
It's such an ambitious class. Like Drew Richardson spent hours and hours and hours with the help of the prefectural archives in Okinawa, scanning documents, thousands of documents.
Wow.
And so we actually give students, even who haven't been able to travel or who aren't a part of OMI, we expose them to actual government documents, actual prefectural documents from the time period. And then that's their final project, is to actually do primary source analysis,
that's really immersive.
It's a historian's dream.
Yeah, Lex, we definitely have already succeeded. Just as with every giving day, we're already number one. We're the biggest winners. I actually, one of my housemates had taken that class that you guys made, and I remember the filming it of, I remember Sean filmed some of that class as well, because we were doing it on our last trip. I remember he was asking me, we came home one day, and he was like, hey, what do you know about USCAR? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? I never thought that my like bleach blonde surfer, like 6 foot white housemate would ever utter those words to me. And I was like, yes, this is the master plan. Like, we're getting people talking about it, because I think like overall, like if we can get these undergrads who probably had never heard of Okinawa beforehand to walk away with this like love and like this deep connection to this place that's so special to all of us. Like, I think we've already like wildly succeeded. I guess like some like reach goals that I think would be really cool is, yeah, going to like Bolivia. I'd love to see the team go to Bolivia one day, and having like, you know, Portuguese, like Spanish speakers do interviews, because I think like, I guess the weird subgenre that I like, the niche that I fit into in OMI was doing like oral histories.
Right.
And I would love to see like more students continue that. And I think they are. Like, it seems like the oral history team is still running pretty strong under our new leadership.
I would love to see you guys expand into like the other part of our diaspora, because that's like another whole treasure trove to learn
Very
more
much
from.
so.
But how else can people support the project or get involved?
So you can follow us on our social media. It's UCSC_OMI on Instagram. And we also have a Facebook page that we post a lot of updates. Shout out to Kim. She's been running social media and she has been just killing it. We are filming on Giving Day. And so it does feel a little odd saying how do you like ask people for money without saying give us money?
Consider being generous.
I'm just kidding. I think this community has just been such like a gift of COVID. And I'm explicitly now talking about the community like you guys have created, the people over at Shimanchi Nukui have created, all the language classes, and like what social media has really done to connect young Shimanchu, I think it's the biggest gift. And it's the only good thing to come out of COVID as far as I'm concerned. But I think like there's monetary support, obviously, but just engaging with us and talking with us. If your family has a really interesting story, or if you can't figure out how to look at the Gale photos and you want to like reach out to us, like we want to connect more with Shikenu Shimanchu all over the world. And so like, we're friendly people. Please talk to us.
We're super cool. Yeah, come hit us up.
But yeah, and we're open to suggestions as well. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a small undergraduate-led research project that tries our hardest, but we probably are missing some stuff. And so if you have suggestions, please.
Awesome. We'll have all those links in our show notes so you can help support them in whatever capacity you can. But we're saving our favorite question. You guys know what question this is. Go to karaoke song. Anyone can answer it first.
I actually just did karaoke at Boardwalk Bowl on Monday evening.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I haven't gone karaoke during COVID, and that's like one thing I really miss.
Doesn't Coasters have like a giant plexiglass square you have to stand in?
It's pretty funny. It's like a little like mini like break dancing square. I didn't get to perform because our bowling lane opened up, but usually my go-to, if it just depends on like the vibe. If it's kind of like quiet, I will normally do like a Bill Withers song, you know, It's like easy. But if I'm feeling spicy, if you get me drunk enough, I will definitely sing any pop punk anthem. Yes. Namely, my go-to is I'm Just a Kid by Simple Plan, because who hates that song? Cheaper by the Dozen, like amazing movie.
I thought you were going to say your go-to was like Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne.
I definitely sang that at my house on Halloween.
Nice. I'm all for the emo scene. That's my jams. But what about you, Lex?
So I can't sing, but I can yell really well.
That works too.
And so I think like my favorite karaoke song is sort of anything by Amy Winehouse. If you're loud enough, you can sort of sound okay. But my favorite karaoke song, Hilson Took Mine, because I'm like in Okinawa. I have so many good memories of just Omi trips and country roads. There is
classic.
There's a bar that's in Naha, and I forget what it's called, but it's run by a Bolivia Uchinanchu who moved back to Naha. And so if you walk in, you can just speak Spanish, Uchinaguchi, or Japanese.
That's amazing.
Amigos or something?
Country Roads came on. Everybody started singing. And like the year prior, our buddy Cameron, we were talking about, he went out one night and came home with a guitar. And we're like, where'd you get that guitar? And he was like, some older Uchinanchu man told me to wait here at the izakaya, and he went home and he grabbed a guitar and he gave it to me and he said, play Country Roads. And then he told me I could keep the guitar. So I just have so many good memories of that particular song in Okinawa specifically.
Wow. Amazing. Well,
but I am not from West Virginia, unlike Kelson.
It's okay. It's like a very well accepted song. Like,
apparently.
It's a good karaoke song.
I'm surprised you didn't pick Piano Man. You didn't pick an ABBA song, Lex. What has happened? You didn't pick
ABBA is my dance song, and Piano Man is my in the car song. See, there's different versions, like carpool karaoke. Get a little Les Mis up in here. Okay.
Ooh, a little Dolly Parton. Sir? I still have a great video of you just busting out 9 to 5, like just hopping on the expressway.
Okay, so I will wrap it up with my favorite memory. My favorite memory on an Omi trip was at the Dojo Bar in Naha. And me, Tommy, Julia, and Ted went on one of our days off.
Oh no, what a gang.
I was DDing. And so we walk in and like the bartender was like, oh, like you're American, play some music. Gives us the Spotify account. And Tommy Hertz, I will mention him by name because this is just such an infamous act.
Called out.
Like, One Day More by Les Mis.
Tommy's done so many culturally unacceptable things.
And so we're in the dojo bar, this house of martial arts legends drink here. He plays Les Mis. We get about 4 minutes into the song before the bartender realizes exactly what has happened, immediately takes away all of our music privileges, and we were lucky we didn't get kicked out. That's my favorite memory.
That's a pretty great one. Well, we're going to add all these songs to our karaoke playlist, so when we all meet up, we're going to have it in this order, and we're going to take turns singing.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just leave it off with some inspiring or uninspiring words, I don't know how you'll take this as preachy. I don't know how it'll come across, but I think what we're trying to do at Omi is bigger than Omi itself. I think the exposure to Okinawan history as Shimanchu is something we all are striving for greater access to. Mm-hmm. And so here's hoping that Omi is only the first of many projects that do this type of work.
Yes, and I can't wait to see what else you guys do. I will 100% support you.
Yeah.
We will all support you.
Tune in next year. We're going to have a great lineup of speakers.
Yes, we'll look forward to it. And we'll definitely push that on our social medias when that information comes out.
Yeah, deebiru.
Yay. Thank you again, Stephen and Lex, for joining us today. Where can we direct folks looking to find out more information about what you do?
So I'm on Facebook as Alexis or parentheses Lex McClellan-Ufugusuku. That's probably one of the better places to find me. Yeah. Oh, or I guess if you don't have a Facebook, I have email. You can just Google my name and the grad directory will come up.
We can also add that to the show notes. And Stephen, where can people find you?
I am on Instagram more than I would like to admit. My handle is all lowercase NorCal Sushi. Had that since I was in like 6th grade. Never gonna change it. Wow. A little bit cringy. If anybody wants to go climbing in the Bay Area, please let me know. I'm always around.
Awesome.
Yeah, hopefully we'll connect with everyone next year at Taikai.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about the Taikai.
Yes. Hopefully it'll be safe for us to return.
Yeah, I hope so.
Fingers crossed for both 𝔼𝕝 and for everyone doing Taikai.
Thank you so much for joining us for this reflective episode. How do you imagine the history of the Ryukyuan people and culture passed on? What Okinawan memories were passed to you and how? Photos? Songs? Verbal stories? What about today? Have we moved over to Instagram stories and 140-character tweets? What Okinawan memories do you hope to pass on? Drop us a line and keep the conversation going by reaching out on Instagram at 𝔼ℎ𝕬𝕝 Podcast or sending us an email at 𝔼ℎ𝕬�podcast@gmail.com. Deep bows of gratitude to our guests who were on our call today from Okinawa Memories Initiative, McClellan-Ufugusuku, and Stephen Yogi. You can find more information about the initiative and our guests on our show notes section of the website.
And a big Ippee ℍ𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕚 to Jesse Shiroma and his band Streetlight Cadence for providing this episode's music, and Brandon Ufugusuku-Ing for the music for the fun fact. You can find Jesse Shiroma on Instagram at Jesse Shiroma. You can find Streetlight Cadence on Instagram at Streetlight Cadence. And you can find their music on Bandcamp at streetlightcadence.bandcamp.com. You can find Brandon Ufugusuku-Ing on Instagram at _sing_uchinaguchi, or you can find his music on Bandcamp at brandoning.bandcamp.com. These links can all be found in our show notes on our website.
If you haven't been to our website, please check us out. There are a ton of resources in the show notes section. And this episode features a very special blog post by Sean Torralba, also of 𝔼𝕝, where he reflects on the experience with the initiative as a non-𝔼ℎ𝕬𝕝 ally. Finally, a huge thank you again to all those who showed up to support our Kickstarter and our giveaway. Stay tuned for future episodes where we will have our 5-minute exclusives with our ℍ𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕼 level Kickstarter backers. There is so much to be thankful for, and to that I say, kari, and we'll see you next time. Matayasai.
Welcome to the fun fact of the episode. You made it to the end. Woohoo! So today's fun fact will be about the Shimanchu Diaspora Visual Archives, which will be launching in December 2021 and will be curated by 𝕼𝕚𝕚𝕚 and myself, Tori Toguchi. It will be a collection of family and historical photographs and visual memories from the Shimanchu and Ryukyuan diaspora, a virtual space to reframe our own histories, reimagine our shoebox archives, and connect with other Shimanchu living on the islands or across the globe. If you're interested in sharing your photos, please email us. We'd love and appreciate it to shimanchu.diaspora.archives@gmail.com. We also aim to connect with each other by learning about these archives, holding conversations, workshops, and virtual spaces together. Thank you again so much for staying until the very end of this episode, and we hope to see you in the next episode. Matayasai!